If you've ever built something from scratch only to have it stolen by the people who claim to love you, then yeah, you'll understand why I don't do family dinners anymore. My name's Carter. I'm 29 now. But this all started when I was 24, 5 years ago, when I had the dumbest idea in the world, to trust my family with something I loved. Back then, I was a nobody, fresh out of college with a marketing degree and no connections. I started a small branding agency out of a shared workspace, living off instant noodles and Wi-Fi that dropped every time it rained. I didn't have investors. I didn't have advisors. I had a thrift store laptop and a dream. My parents didn't get it. They thought digital marketing was code for unemployed. My dad, Roy, worked in logistics his whole life, and he was proud of it too. My mom, Marla, did administrative work for a law office and thought entrepreneurship meant pyramid scheme. And my sister, Danielle, 3 years younger than me. TikTok-level charisma, zero patience, and a knack for making herself the center of any room she walked into. Danielle was the golden one. She always had better clothes, a bigger bedroom, and louder praise. When she dropped out of community college, my mom said she was just exploring her creative side. When I got a B-, it was disappointing. Still, I didn't resent her. I just wanted my own lane. So I put my head down and built my business. For the first 2 years, it was a grind. Cold emails, unpaid pitches, 3 a.m. design tweaks for clients who barely paid minimum wage. But I pushed through, and slowly, it started to work. By the time I was 26, I had a small team, a real office, and a few mid-sized clients in retail and tech. I wasn't rich, but I was stable, growing. And for the first time in my life, my parents showed up to one of my launch events. That should have been the first red flag. They smiled, said all the right things, told me how proud they were, then asked if Danielle could intern. I wanted to say no. I should have said no. But part of me thought, if she's finally interested in something I care about, maybe this is progress. Maybe she's turning a corner. So I let her in. She shadowed me for 2 weeks, sat in on meetings, took selfies in front of the office mural, and tweeted things like, "Boss babe in training," with hashtags that made my teeth itch. She didn't learn much, but she learned enough. That's when things started to shift. She started suggesting rebrands. "We should be more fun, more trendy," she said. "You're too stiff. Clients want vibes." I told her professionalism is a vibe. She told me I was old. I was 27. Then, one afternoon, I came home to a family dinner I didn't remember agreeing to. My parents were there. Danielle too. So was my uncle and aunt, people I hadn't seen in months. I walked in and immediately felt it. The smiles were too tight. The wine was already poured. Danielle looked like she was holding a secret with both hands. "We want to talk to you," my mom said, gesturing to the table. So I sat, and then they dropped it. "We've been talking," my dad said, "and we think it's time to turn your business into a family venture. Make it a legacy." Danielle beamed. "We want to make me co-owner," she said. I thought it was a joke. I laughed. They didn't. Mom jumped in. "She's been taking branding courses online. She has a great eye for trends. This could help you, Carter. You've been so overwhelmed lately." Overwhelmed? Danielle once asked me what a P&L sheet was during a client pitch. I stayed calm. Asked what they meant by co-owner. What the actual plan was. Dad gave me the killer line. "Well, the business is under the family trust. You set it up that way when you moved home after college. Remember? For tax purposes." I froze. They weren't asking. They were telling. They were about to legally hand over half of everything I had built to a woman who once thought QR codes were a government tracking device. I got up. Didn't shout. Didn't cry. But my hands shook as I left. By morning, I'd submitted the paperwork to relinquish my operational control. They didn't fire me. I walked away. I spent the first 3 weeks after walking away in a haze. Not depressed exactly. Just unplugged. I didn't sleep much. Ate like garbage. Scrolled through news I didn't care about. Watched Danielle and my parents post exciting family business news on social media like they hadn't just stolen something right out of my hands. Danielle changed the brand name within days. Rejuvenate became Juvie. Shorter, snappier, more Gen Z, according to her. She replaced the clean slate gray logo with a neon pink gradient that looked like a nightclub flyer. Started pushing influencers and posting memes about marketing like she'd invented copywriting last Tuesday. I watched it unravel, like someone watching their ex move in with the guy she told you not to worry about. My name was still on some of the LLC paperwork, but I didn't care. I didn't want it. I didn't want anything tied to them. I built that company from the ground up, given up birthdays, weekends, steady paychecks, friends. And they took it like it was a toy left out on the lawn. The worst part? They thought they were entitled to it. Like my time, my talent, my effort, all of it was just part of being a good son. As if that was the trade. I build something real, and they get to slap a family sticker on it like it's some artisanal lemonade stand. I spent the next few weeks crashing at a friend's place, Brandon, one of the only people who didn't ask me what I was going to do next. He just handed me coffee and kept the fridge stocked. Gave me space. I owe him more than I've ever admitted. I tried job boards. Sent a few resumes. Got replies like, "You're overqualified," or worse, "We're not looking for founders. We need team players." Translation: we don't trust people who've been burned. You might set fire to the next place too. But one night, maybe 3 or 4 weeks in, I opened an old sketch pad from my college days. Scribbled something. A phrase. A design idea. A product name. Then another. Then a layout. I didn't even realize what I was doing until 2 hours had passed, and I had 8 pages of notes and wireframes and brand concepts for a new business. Not a copy of the old one. Not a do-over. Something entirely different. Leaner. Sharper. Mine. I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't done. That maybe the worst thing they'd done wasn't taking what I built. It convinced me I was finished. That I'd already done the one good thing I had in me. They were wrong. By the end of the month, I'd registered a new LLC. New name. New domain. New strategy. I didn't announce it. Didn't post a single thing. No hashtags. No motivational quotes. Just work. Silent. Focused. Every minute I spent rebuilding was one less minute they got to say they made me. Because they didn't. Hey guys, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment if you have any feedback. Let's go to the story. They just gave me a reason to get sharper. Colder. Better. There's something weirdly peaceful about starting from zero the second time. Not fun. Not exciting. But quiet. The kind of quiet that lets you finally hear yourself think without the pressure to prove anything. I didn't have investors, but I had savings, barely. Enough for 3 months of ramen and rent if I skipped every luxury. No designer chairs, no flashy website, no team. Just me. A borrowed desk. And a new brand. Northstack. Lean creative strategy, stripped down to what actually works. No fluff. No buzzwords. No neon gradients. I didn't tell anyone. I wasn't trying to impress LinkedIn. I didn't need another round of "so proud of you" from people who hadn't called me in a year. Instead, I cold emailed 10 people I'd worked with at my old agency. Told them I was starting fresh. Told them I'd do a month of brand work at a discount if they'd just take the call. 3 said yes. 1 became my first client. That first week back in the saddle felt like coming out of a coma. The creative rush, the puzzle solving, the build, it was all still there. Just buried under a few layers of anger and dust. Every deliverable I sent out was like reclaiming a piece of myself. Meanwhile, across town, Juvie was getting messy. Danielle had gone full throttle with her influencer angle, shoving out unpaid collaborations, sloppy ad copy, and an over-designed website with 15 different font styles. Clients weren't thrilled. I knew because one of my old clients forwarded me a screenshot of an email she sent them. Let's circle back on synergy-driven creative amplification. He responded, "What does this mean?" She never answered. They dropped her 3 weeks later. By the second month, I had 3 recurring clients. Not huge contracts, but consistent. 1 in e-commerce, 1 in hospitality, and 1, ironically, a consulting firm that Danielle once tried to pitch during my launch event and completely bombed. The work came in waves. I was pulling 70-hour weeks, eating gas station snacks, and running on caffeine, but for the first time in years, I didn't feel stretched thin. I felt carved sharp. Everything I did was intentional. No fluff. No unnecessary noise. I was the ghost in the walls, redesigning logos, rewriting brand decks, and tweaking email funnels, all under the radar. I even stopped using my full name on the site. Clients referred me by first name only. No one asked. No one cared about my backstory. They just wanted results. Meanwhile, Danielle started posting cryptic stories about scaling pains and leadership challenges. I couldn't help but laugh. She hadn't scaled anything. She'd inherited a ladder and then tried to turn it into a trampoline. My parents? Still cheering her on. Still posting about family entrepreneurship. still acting like I didn't exist. That used to hurt, but not anymore. Because every time I saw a bad pitch from her, a client ghosted, or a confused testimonial, it reminded me of one simple truth. You can steal a business, but you can't fake the work. It started with an email. Subject line: opportunity to collaborate, confidential. I almost deleted it. Thought it was spam. Or worse, Danielle trying to patch things up by offering me a fake partnership out of guilt or desperation. But the sender wasn't her. It was Travis Green. Back in the early days, Travis ran one of the biggest creative firms in the state, mid-sized, well-respected, and one of the few people I looked up to in the industry. He'd once spoken at a conference I couldn't afford to attend, so I volunteered just to hear him live. Now, he was emailing me. I opened it. Carter, I heard through a client that you've started something new. I've seen your work before, and I was impressed back then, but your recent campaigns for East Trail and Vale Hotel? Next level. I'd love to discuss a potential strategic partnership or acquisition if you're open to it. No pressure. Coffee's on me. I sat there for 10 minutes just staring. This wasn't some sympathy handout. He'd seen the work, tracked it, liked it. I Googled East Trail to see what he might have seen. Turns out one of my landing pages had gone semi-viral on a niche marketing blog. Someone had written an article about it. Minimalist branding that converts, a clinic on subtle design. They didn't mention my name, but I knew every pixel of that layout. I replied to Travis. Polite, grateful. Said I was open to chatting. We met at a little industrial cafe near the city center. He wore a gray blazer and no tie. Casual confidence. The kind of guy who talks low and makes you lean in. We didn't waste time. I like what you're doing, he said. I've seen a lot of new shops burn out trying to make noise. You're not making noise, you're building systems. That matters. I nodded. Noise doesn't pay. He grinned. Then he leaned back. I'm offering 2 paths, he said. 1, we bring you in under our brand. Senior strategist. Full autonomy. High salary, benefits, mentorship. Or 2, you keep your name. We send you clients. Referrals. A retainer for consulting. Both were generous. Both gave me credibility, safety, and respect. But what caught my attention wasn't the offer. It was what he said next. I also want to mention something else. We recently had a meeting with a firm called Juvie. My stomach tensed. Travis raised an eyebrow. They pitched us a rebrand campaign. We were unimpressed. They name-dropped you. Said you were an early collaborator who was no longer involved creatively. I laughed. Loudly. Travis smiled. Yeah, figured that was nonsense. Thought you should know. That was the moment it clicked. They were still using my name. Not officially. Not in print. But in conversations, in client meetings, in rooms I hadn't walked into in years, they were still trading on what I built. I should have been furious. But I wasn't. Because that told me one thing. They were scared. If Danielle truly had taken over and made it her own, she wouldn't need to name-drop me to get clients. She wouldn't be spinning half-truths about how I used to help out or left to pursue other things. They needed my ghost to close deals. And ghosts don't stay quiet forever. The next morning, I woke up early, made coffee, opened my laptop, and drafted a single email. Not to Danielle, not to my parents, to a client, a very specific one. East Trail, the e-commerce brand whose campaign had quietly put me back on the map. We just wrapped a 6-week rollout, and I knew they were happy. They'd already extended their retainer. I also knew they were in talks with another agency, Juvie, about influencer partnerships. Danielle didn't know I was behind Northstack. She probably assumed I'd disappeared. So I wrote, Hey, client's name. Just a heads up. I've been informed that a firm currently pitching your influencer division has mentioned me as a past collaborator. That's not accurate. I'm not associated with them, nor do I endorse their work or process. I value transparency. And if there's any confusion, I'm happy to clarify directly. Best. Carter. I hit send. No drama. Just facts. A few hours later, I got a reply. Appreciate the note. I was already side-eyeing their pitch. It felt messy. You're good. We're sticking with you. Simple. Done. And I knew, word would get around. This space is smaller than people think. Referrals matter. Reputation matters more. And Danielle had been building her empire on mine. For months, I stayed silent. Let her talk. Let them pose. Let them use the scaffolding of my work like it was theirs. But the moment I started reclaiming my name, even just subtly, They panicked. That week, 2 more clients backed out of contracts with Juvie. One of them emailed NorthStack and said, "You're not related to them, right? Because your stuff works." I didn't even respond. Didn't need to. Because what was happening now wasn't revenge. It was gravity. Danielle had launched fast, full color, big slogans, loud voice. But she didn't know how to hold weight. Didn't know how to back it up. So it started collapsing. First, her copywriter quit. Said she wasn't paying on time. Then, a leaked screenshot popped up in a Slack group I'm part of. Danielle ranting to a client about creative entitlement and haters. Bad look. Meanwhile, NorthStack was growing. Not viral. Not massive. Just consistent. And in this industry, that's the flex. I started getting invites to speak. Quiet rooms. Thoughtful ones. The kind Danielle always wanted to be in but never got past the door. And still, through it all, I never said her name. Never aired it out. Never blasted receipts. When are you winning? You don't have to yell. They'll hear you anyway. The email subject line read, "Panel Opportunity, Modern Branding and Storytelling, sponsored by Redmont Media." Redmont wasn't just a big name, they were the name. Legacy media company turned digital powerhouse. Their annual branding event was known for drawing real talent and high-level decision-makers. The invite was short, professional, and flattering. They wanted me, NorthStack, to speak on a panel about storytelling and modern branding. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then, I clicked the link to view the speaker list. That's when I saw it. Danielle Martin, CEO, Juvie Creative. My sister. My replacement. My shadow. I laughed. A little too loud for 9 a.m. This wasn't a coincidence. Redmont didn't know our backstory. They weren't playing matchmaker. They just picked 2 agencies operating in the same space, in the same region. To them, it was just a pairing. To me, it was a live case study. I said yes. Not because I wanted to humiliate her, but because I wanted the work to speak. The event was held at a sleek co-working campus downtown. Big LED screens, cold brew on tap, and logo walls for selfies. The kind of over-polished setup Danielle would post about for weeks. I arrived early, checked in quietly. No entourage. No flair. Danielle showed up 15 minutes before start time in a neon blazer and heels designed more for noise than movement. She saw me across the room and froze. She masked it quickly, flashing a tight smile. I gave a small nod. No wave. No drama. Just acknowledgement. The panel was titled Brand Identity in the Era of Oversaturation. There were 4 of us on stage. A moderator. 2 agency heads. And us. Danielle introduced Juvie first. Spoke in buzzwords. Said things like, "Our vibe is velocity," and "We amplify culture through aesthetic." The crowd looked politely confused. Then it was my turn. I introduced NorthStack with one sentence. "We build brands that speak quietly and convert loudly." Then, I walked through a recent case study. Minimal slides. Clear results. Specific strategy. No fluff. Just substance. Afterward, the moderator asked a group question. "What do you believe is the biggest mistake new brands make today?" Danielle answered first. "Not being loud enough. You have to disrupt. You have to show up big." I waited, then said, "I think the biggest mistake is mistaking attention for trust. You can shout all day, but if you're not building clarity and consistency behind it, you're just part of the noise." A few people nodded. One person even clapped. Not for me. For the difference. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't messy. It was surgical. By the end of the panel, people lined up to ask questions. Only 1 stood in front of Danielle. 7 stood in front of me. After the session, we crossed paths backstage. Danielle stopped me. "You think you're better than me now?" I looked at her. "No," I said. "I was better when I built something for all of us. You just didn't want to share it." Then I walked away. She didn't follow. The day after the panel, I got a message from one of Juvie's former clients. He'd attended the event. We'd worked together once, briefly back when I was still under my old brand. He hadn't known the story. Didn't ask. Just wrote, "Your presentation was sharp. I'm dropping Juvie. Let me know if you're taking new clients." It felt clean. Not triumphant. Just right. Over the next month, 3 more clients followed. Each with some version of the same line. "We liked what you said. Juvie just isn't delivering. We're looking for results, not reels." Meanwhile, Danielle's content started changing. Less celebration. More vague posts about navigating setbacks and resilience through challenge. Juvi's site stopped updating its client roster. Then, the kicker, a job listing went live on a freelancer board. Juvi was seeking a part-time senior brand consultant. The rate? Half of what I was charging. The desperation was showing. And I hadn't said a word publicly. No blog post. No subtweets. No expose. All I'd done was do the work. That's what was eating her. Not that I was angry. Not that I was vengeful. But that I had completely moved on and succeeded anyway. One morning, I got a call from a local business journal. They were doing a feature on young founders who rebuilt from scratch. I was on the list. So was Danielle. I almost said no. But then I realized something. This wasn't about exposure. This was about setting the record straight. I agreed, on one condition. No personal details. No drama. Just the facts. The article dropped 2 weeks later. It outlined my journey from the original company to the quiet comeback through NorthStack. It included a quote from me that said, "Sometimes starting over isn't failure, it's freedom. Especially when what you built no longer belongs to you." Danielle's quote was less focused. It's not about who started what. It's about where we are now. We're all growing. But she wasn't. Not really. And the people reading could tell. A few days later, I got a call from a private equity group. They'd seen the article. They were interested in acquiring NorthStack, a small deal, mostly talent and systems. I'd stay on with autonomy. Or I could cash out completely and walk. It wasn't a fortune. But it was a win. Enough to wipe out my debts. Fund my next idea. Give me space. Eliza, yes, the same lawyer who once helped a friend of mine in a very different battle, helped me review the terms. Said they were solid. And suddenly, I had something I hadn't had in years. A choice. Not a fight. Not a reaction. My own next chapter. And I realized something. Danielle's downfall wasn't my victory. This was. I signed the deal on a Thursday. No press release. No LinkedIn announcement. Just a few quiet signatures, a wire transfer, and a handshake with a firm that respected the work for what it was. Not a brand. Not a buzzword. Just proof. That night, I went for a walk through the same neighborhood where I used to hand out flyers for my old company. 10 blocks. Same cracked sidewalks. It's the same cafe with the chipped sign where I used to sit outside, writing pitch decks on free Wi-Fi. And I let it sink in. I built 2 businesses. One they stole. One they couldn't touch. A week later, I got a text from my dad. No greeting. Just, "Heard you sold. Congrats. That offer to come back still stands. Would be good to bring the family together." I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, but because I had my family. Brandon, who gave me a couch when I couldn't sleep in my own house. The freelancers who became co-creators. The clients stayed not for loyalty, but because I delivered. That was my circle now. And it was enough. A few days after that, I saw a post from Danielle. A story. Just text. Some people care more about legacy than love. I'll always choose love, even if it means starting over. Again, I smiled. Not bitterly. Just knowingly. Because starting over? That's precisely what I did. I didn't ask for anyone's permission. 6 months later, I launched a small collective. No full-time staff. No office lease. Just clean, creative strategy and hand-picked collaborators who love the work. We don't sell hype. We don't use the word synergy. And we don't need stolen origin stories to make a sale. We go by a different name now. But every time someone asks where I got my start, I just say, let's call it a lesson in what not to trust. Because in the end, they can take your idea. They can take your logo. They can even take credit for a little while. But the real work? The real value? That stays with the one who built it.